So the Organic Foods Production Act was tied to the Farm Bill, which kind of carried it along. It got through the Senate, but in the process, the Senate stripped out all references to health and the environment, and it got rid of the research title, and ended up with the Organic Food Production Act version that was really a marketing bill. And that's how, we got to where we are with the National Organic Program. The House also held hearings, but refused to report the bill out. And that, you would just say, well, that probably kills the bill. But Congressman DeFazio from Oregon took the Senate bill and introduced it as an amendment on the House floor and got it passed. And it stunned USDA, and the House Agriculture Committee, I don't think, has ever gotten over this. And so that's why we do have an Organic Foods Production Act. And it was passed with the votes of urban members of Congress. This is a really interesting thing. A lot of the farm state people did not vote for it, but it passed by a fairly nice margin. So the National Organic Standards Board, which was set up not too much later, and the Organic Standards Board, you probably don't know, but it has various categories: consumer members, environmental, science, organic farmers, and so forth. And it was a wonderful board. And it went out across the country, held 15 different hearings, visited organic farms, and their job was to put together the rule that would be the follow-up to the Organic Foods Production Act. And so they submitted a draft which all of the organic groups bought into. Said, this is fine with us. We don't agree with everything, but let's just go with this. Well, what happened was USDA just took that NOSB thing and just trashed it and ignored many of the recommendations, overturned others, opened the door, as you may remember, to sewage sludge and various other things, and challenged, in fact, the authority of the NOSB to even regulate materials, which is in the law. So we were really upset. We felt betrayed and that this was really pretty terrible. And so all of the organic people got together in Washington for 2 days, and we went through that bill line by line. Honest, we did, and it's a very long, the proposed rule. And we came up with what we called, and I think this was really a good stroke, 66 points of darkness. And so USDA was pretty upset by this. And anyway, that sort of set the stage for the other thing that we agreed on that day was, we're going to ram this back down their throat. We're not going to take this. And actually that prevailed. And USDA finally decided, after getting 278,000 negative comments on the proposed rule, they took it back and rewrote it. And it was only 2002 that we finally had the final version of the rule. Since then, there has been an attempt almost all the time to undermine the role of the NOSB. And the NOSB represents us all. That's the whole point. When the NOSB was set up, what was part of the bargain was we all agreed, first of all, USDA is clueless about this, and we're not going to trust them to do an organic rule and an organic program. And we didn't think that they could continue to make the decisions about materials, which were very controversial and still are. And then this also included sort of a peer-reviewed review of the NOP program. And of course, USDA said, we're not having anybody look over our shoulder on this. And they never actually have done this. They've resisted it constantly. And now, well, and another thing that's happened, the USDA didn't like what the NOSB was doing, and they had the power to appoint NOSB members. So what they started doing was putting industry people in the slots that were reserved by law for farmers and for consumers. And so this was an abuse of their authority to appoint. And that's still going on. And the latest thing is the sunset thing, which you may have heard about. But under the sunset, let me just say this. No synthetics are allowed unless the NOSB says they can be used for 5 years. And so that went on very well for about 10 years. And then USDA is getting all kinds of pressure to approve more of these materials to lower the standards. And they decided, well, let's change the rule here. And these materials are going to stay on the list until we get a big vote from the NOSB to take them off. Well, of course, the votes are not there. They did this without any advance notice and all of the administrative procedures that had been used before for any kinds of changes in the rules. So the whole organic community is really upset about this. It's still going on, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But again, another indicator of the bad attitude of the NOSB. I wrote a column several years ago, and I gave the NOSB an A for their volunteers and for all the good work they've done. And I gave USDA a D for bad attitude, which I think kind of summed it up. This says 20 years later, which I'm not sure how that got in there. But in 1997, because there had been all the foot dragging on organic research and still virtually none, Organic Farming Research Foundation looked at 30,000 of the agricultural research projects that had been funded by USDA for any purposes and found only 34 that qualified as being strong organic. Now, I have to tell you, it's almost impossible to embarrass USDA, but they really were embarrassed by this because they had the real numbers, and OFRF had a very good reputation. And so this really did change the attitude about organic research within USDA and within the committees on Congress, who also got a lot of heat from this. And USDA spends, $2 billion plus on research, so we're talking big money here. Well, in the 90s, there were a number of organizations that were working in Washington on these kinds of issues. And what we found was that there'd be a little organic thing maybe put in SARE, a little organic thing hidden maybe somewhere else in an existing program, but no organic research programs as such. And the first positive response was in 1998 of the Organic Transition Program, which was hidden in another bill. And maybe that's the reason it got through. But that was the first organic research. Finally, in 2002, there are now organic researches. I understand people are writing proposals now for some of these. And in the last Farm Bill, $20 million for mandatory organic research funding. Still, I would maintain, because we went so many years without any, that there ought to be a lot more for organic research. But I think we're happy to have 20 million. So